The Adam Smith Awards Asia are recognised as the industry benchmark for best practice and innovation in corporate treasury. Throughout this dedicated series, we take a deep dive into each of the winning solutions of 2021, in conversation with the creators themselves.
Hello, I'm Sophie Jackson, Joint Publisher and Head of Strategic Content at the Treasury Today Group. In this episode, we take a look at the overall winner and the highly commended winners of the Best Funding Solution category. Many corporates are exploring alternative sources of funding, diversifying and/or refinancing their funding sources. With an increase in M&A activity, we've seen many different types of funding submitted, whether a single transaction or as part of a company's overall debt strategy. And the overall winner of the Best Funding Solution is Secretary General Datuk Seri Azri bin Hamidin at Ministry of Finance, Government of Malaysia.
My name is Datuk Azri bin Hamidin. Currently, I am the Secretary General of Treasury at the Ministry of Finance, Malaysia. First of all, on behalf of the Government of Malaysia, I would like to thank Treasury today for giving us the opportunity and recognition of our 2021 SDG Suku issuance. This is a fantastic recognition for the Government of Malaysia as we launch the world's first sovereign US dollar sustainability Suku. The transaction is important to us for the number of reasons. First, it allows us to consolidate our leadership position in Islamic finance. Second, we prove that we can be innovative and deliver a first-of-its-kind Suku. And third, it allows us to demonstrate and stay true to our commitment to responsible investment. But I think most importantly, the recognitions provide us with an opportunity to celebrate all hard work and collaboration across our function, the extended teams, as well as with our partner banks that have supported us and made it transaction a reality. We are truly honored to receive it. We have always prided ourselves for our responsible investment, where most of the country's Suku issuance in the past year have been tied to the principle of sustainability. With the luxury of deep local onshore liquidity market in ringgit to tap for funding, the issuance of USD sovereign bond by Malaysian government is not a frequent occurrence. However, in April 2021, with the US Treasury market performing strongly, the government wanted to leverage the investor appetites by issuing a USD Suku structure based on sustainability principle in order to attract high-quality investors as well as set new benchmark yield for the Malaysia issuer. With that, we began engaging our banking partner, where we coordinate efforts to promote the Suku across Asia Pacific, Middle East, Europe, and the US. Ultimately, the proceeds will be used to fund an array of social and green projects including healthcare, education, basic infrastructure, clean transportation, sustainable management of natural resources, renewable energy, and green buildings, showing our commitment as determined by the Sustainable Development Goal. We work closely with JP Morgan, HSBC, and CIMB to structure and issue the bond within an extremely tight time frame of 5 weeks, which is really a record time for a bond of its kind during this time. We also had to ensure the issuance was validated by a second-party opinion, SPO, to deem the product as sustainable and credible. We also took an extremely innovative approach for the Sukuk as we fully utilize travel voucher as the underlying asset of the bond to monetize the future ticket sale of our country's MRT and LRT train services, thus setting a benchmark in sustainability Islamic bond. By intensively promoting the sukuk across the 4 regions, we will be able to raise $1.3 billion. We surpassed our initial target of $1 billion. We were also able to price the bond more favorable as we shave off 35 basis points for our 10 years tranches and 40 basis points for the 30 years tranches from our initial bond price guidance. The landmark issuance breaks new ground of multiple counts. From the innovative use of travel voucher as underlying assets, it has also achieved the lowest spreads and coupon ever for a Malaysian sovereign bond, and it delivered the tightest ever pricing spreads in the history of Southeast Asia sovereign issuance on 30 years tranche. Hence, this was truly a landmark issuance for us. By selling the bond at such a tight pricing, we were also able to set a benchmark for similar issuance in the country, with a number of state-owned companies issuing their own shortly after ours. But most importantly, we would like to recognize the team engagement, professionalism, and collaboration with our stakeholders throughout our deal journey, as this wouldn't have been possible without them.
And now it's time for a word from their partner.
My name is Nurjasmin Ashir. I am the head of corporate banking at JP Morgan Malaysia. JP Morgan was delighted to have worked on this landmark and important transaction. The Government of Malaysia appointed us and 2 others for this deal, and we formed a highly experienced and knowledgeable team right from the beginning to ensure that we were able to provide them with a winning solution. The appointed banks partnered with the Government of Malaysia to gather the appropriate information to understand the challenges and expectations required to undertake these transactions, which included: first was the need to launch quickly, second was to establish a SDG sukuk framework, and lastly was to earmark the intangible asset and structure the sukuk that is compliant to Sharia principles. With this understanding, the mandated banks were able to advise an effective marketing and distribution strategy at the optimal issuance window. As a ratings advisor to the Government of Malaysia over the past 7 years, JP Morgan was also able to use this experience to strategically position Malaysia's credit story against its peers. We, the mandated banks, were also able to leverage our previous first-hand experiences in issuing ESG bonds to deliver recommendations to the Government of Malaysia to complete the Sustainable Sukuk Framework, while also utilizing our extensive relationships to bring together top active investors for the bond issuance. A number of factors made this a landmark and winning solution. First was the level of engagement. With regular touch points, we were able to address any potential issues and deliver the bond within a record timeline of 5 weeks. The second element came down to the government's innovative approach of using travel vouchers as 100% of the underlying assets for the bond and allocating proceeds to green and social activities, making this the first ever sovereign US dollar sustainable sukuk. And lastly was the ability to attract over $8 billion in book orders that was 6 times oversubscribed, which allowed the Malaysian government to achieve a favourable price revisions across the 10-year and 30-year tranches. All this was achievable thanks to the open and collaborative approach from the teams at the Ministry of Finance and the Government of Malaysia, which helped build a strong sense of inclusion with JP Morgan and other partner banks throughout the transaction. We are delighted to have been able to work on this landmark and important transaction, and we look forward to even greater partnerships with the Government of Malaysia.
Next up, the highly commended award in this category.
Hi, my name is Filip Kidon. I'm the Head of Investor Relations at Qantas Airways Limited in Sydney, Australia. My prior role was the Treasury Capital Markets, and that was the role under which we undertook the work that we were lucky enough to receive an award for. Winning the award has been a real honour and I guess a privilege. I think for us as a team, 2020 was a very difficult year, and I think the airline industry has had a couple of very difficult years, and least of all the Treasury teams in there. And it was really a time when, as a Treasury team, all that practice, all that planning that you'd put in ahead of, I guess, a crisis like we've seen came to fruition, and the best plans and the learnings, I guess, from those, were played out. And I guess it was really pleasing for us to see that sort of result turn out well. A lot of what we had planned for, we were able to implement and work on. And I think as a result of that, we achieved really good outcomes for the company. And by virtue of that, some of these outcomes have been recognised by this award today. The biggest challenge, I think, for any Treasury team over the last year has been really around being nimble and being able to pivot as problems emerged. I think all of us were facing a situation and a crisis that was unique. Whilst we all had very good plans, the playbook and the scenario probably wasn't one that any of us had encountered. So being able to sort of pivot as situations emerged, and in our situation, really we had to finance a series of engines for the company through an export-import financing. But some of those engines went back in time, and we'd taken delivery a while back. And I think just working with our partners, the Exim Bank, as well as the guys at JP Morgan, I think we were able to come up with a funding structure that recognised the assets that were in our business had been there for a while, but ultimately they were still eligible for Exim support. And that was extremely valuable at a time when airlines faced a significant liquidity challenge. And, we normally wouldn't look at a financing of engines, but in this case, the unique situation we faced meant that we had to pressure test assumptions, and ultimately that proved to be a great deal for all of us involved. Look, the biggest learning is probably the relationship investment that occurs prior to these situations. So it's often difficult to come up with a unique problem, or I guess face a unique problem with your partners, having not had discussions prior to that. So really the time you invest in the relationship management, making sure that people understand your business. When you're facing a deep crisis, you don't want to be explaining to a chief risk officer for the first time who you are and what you do. And I think we'd spent a lot of time with both our partners in the deal explaining our business prior to the crisis. So when we actually needed their help and their support and the deal teams during that time, that was quite easy. Those were already known outcomes for them. So we could focus on the new problems that the situation created. So I would just emphasize that relationship management and planning and investing that time prior to the crisis probably differentiated us and enabled us to get this outcome on what was quite a unique deal in I think, extremely challenging circumstances.
And now it's time for a word from their partner.
Hi, I'm Mark Davison. I'm Managing Director at JP Morgan and the Client Executive for Qantas Airways. We provided an ample degree of support. JP Morgan proposed a solution to span the gap in financing between US Exim approvals of a US Exim facility and the engine deliveries by structuring a short-term bridge financing facility with a tenor of 3 months. Upon obtaining full Exim approval, we seamlessly converted that bridge facility into a long-term facility with 100% US Exim cover. Well, there was a number of key elements. The solution gave the client access to a diversified source of funding during a period of high stress, which was obviously COVID. And it was delivered in record time despite the complexity of the facility, and was also in the currency of preference for Qantas, being Australian dollars.
A huge congratulations to all our Adam Smith Awards Asia 2021 winners. Thank you for listening to this episode of our dedicated Adam Smith Awards Asia podcast series, brought to you by the Treasury Today Group. More episodes will be coming soon featuring other award-winning solutions. So please subscribe to our channel so you can stay updated wherever you get your podcasts from.